Good evening. The time is 6:30. Today is Thursday, October 27th. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Delory,
Here.
Mata,
Here.
Unkin,
Here.
Guerra,
Here.
Stiegel,
Here.
James,
Here.
Chase.
Here.
Thank you. 7 members present. We have a quorum. Next, item number 3, citizen comments. At this time, if there are any members, any citizens who would like to speak, you may do so now. You have, please fill out a citizen comments form. Limit your time to 3 minutes. Seeing none, I will go ahead and close citizen comments. Citizen comments is now closed. Item number 4, consent agenda. We have consent agenda items A and B. Would anyone like to make a motion?
With a motion,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the consent agenda items.
Thank you. It's been moved to approve consent agenda items A and B. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James, seconded by Commissioner Onken. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion passes. Item number 5, general discussion. 5A, discussion only regarding the City of Kyle 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Mr. Atkinson.
Will Atkinson for the record, Planning Director. We're here tonight to kick off the discussion of our 2030 City of Kyle Comprehensive Plan. It's one we've been working on trying to get rolling for a couple of years, but we're there now. We have Verdunity Group with us. They are our team that we're contracting with to help us manage the comp plan and what have you. And as y'all know, we've already had a couple meetings in the last couple of days for public engagement and all that. And tonight they're going to go over the anticipated schedule and items related to that. And we'll give them the floor.
And commissioners, for this item, go ahead and feel free to just treat it like a workshop. Feel free to go ahead and speak or ask questions as you see fit without necessarily gaining the floor. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. So my name is AJ Favre. I am with Verdunity. With me in attendance tonight, we have Karina Castillo and Marshall Hines also with our team. We have had the pleasure of being here for the last day and a half working in your community and gotten to meet some of you and look forward to working with you a little bit tonight. We are here to definitely put the work in workshop. So we're going to be asking you to really help us go through a couple of different exercises to get us started. Before we do that, we do want to run through a little bit of background information just to refresh your memory about the project itself, the project timeline, and what is anticipated. How do I advance the slides?
Oh, the screen is not. There you go. So you
Okay,
got the-
great. Thank you so much. So we'll spend just a couple of minutes going over these slides. We really want to spend most of the time working with you, but we'll start with this little bit of orientation. So as mentioned, we have been here for the last day and a half or so working through a series of engagement events with your community. So far, that's been really not only enjoyable for us, but informative for us. We've already gotten some great feedback and insights and started spreading the word, which we're going to rely on you, of course, to help us do some more throughout the process. So we want to start first with just reminding you of the project timeline. This is also a graphic that we'll have present at all of the engagement events throughout the process so the public can follow along. We find that's usually really helpful for them to understand where the process is going and where we are currently in it. So this is the graphic that you'll see and you probably saw last night for those of you that were able to join us. So this is a project that is kicking off officially, and with this initial trip, we were looking to essentially establish contact with you in the community and some of your community members and learn about who Kyle is, who are the people that make up the city and community of Kyle. That's really important for us. We don't want to come in with preconceived notions of what you need. It really starts with understanding what the people of Kyle see, observe, the change that they've seen during the time that they've been with the community and what they see as being important needs and desires. So we're in the current phase 1, which is the assessment phase of the overall project. This will take us through the end of this calendar year. And primarily what we're looking to do here is to not only get to know the people of Kyle, but get to know the city of Kyle as it relates to the fiscal analysis that is one component of the work that we'll be putting together, getting to know Kyle from a land use perspective, getting to know Kyle from an assessment of your adopted plans and guidelines, visioning documents, the plethora of things that together lead and guide you and your city council and your city staff in conducting the work that you're doing every day. So the primary things that we'll be doing in this assessment phase include not only looking over all of those documents which your staff has provided us with and already given us some good insights on. We'll be very interested to see the downtown plan cross the finish line very soon, and we'll be, of course, integrating that into the work that we're doing. We've looked at your recent transportation plan as an example of another element that we'll be pulling into this as well. And then we have a series of surveys and different analysis tools that we'll be doing throughout this. Survey 1, I want to mention for anyone that is listening virtually or in the audience tonight, is currently live. There is a project website that is dedicated to sharing information about upcoming events, the latest information as to the phase of the project we're currently in, what that entails, where people can find more information, summaries of the trips that have already been taken. So we'll start with including some of the photos and insights from this trip. So you'll see those up on the website soon. We do have some cards that we had printed that contain not only a URL to that project website, but also a QR code. And so we've saved some of those. We've gotten rid of most of those in the last day and a half by meeting with the public and sharing those. We've put those around at local businesses. We've had some great talks with some of your small business owners here around the square, but also in other places that we've been able to see as we've been in town and asking them to share those with their patrons. So we've allocated a few of those for each of you, and we ask that you just share those as widely as you can. Share not only the cards themselves, but the code itself. You can send that virtually if you'd like to take a photo of it and text it to someone, send it as an email attachment, share it on your social media feeds. That's something that's really helpful. So into 2023, we'll be moving around the first of that calendar year into phase 2, which was really the exploratory phase of the project. And in this exploratory phase, there are a few main elements that we'll be looking at. One is land use, which of course is the purview of this particular group. So we'll be working very closely with you on this. We'll also be looking at mobility elements around the community, parks and public space, and looking at growth scenarios. So it's no secret that growth is happening as we stand here speaking tonight for the city of Kyle, but understanding where that growth is occurring, how to harness that growth, what type of growth that should be, what kind of development that should result in. Those are all the types of conversations we'll be having with you as well as residents in phase 2. We'll have a second trip out here to Kyle during that phase where we will focus on discussions about growth and land use. So all of the engagement activities will be couched in those terms, asking people to think about those concepts, and we'll build on that with each subsequent phase. Phase 3 will run April through June of 2023. This is where we really get into the layout of the plan. We start producing an actual deliverable. And so we talk about things like ideas and strategy and how to assemble those. So as you all well know, the comprehensive plan is really critical for Texas cities because it is the synopsis of the vision that's adopted by that community and the roadmap of how to achieve that vision. And so in order to put those elements together, we'll rely heavily on you, the city council, your city staff, and the community as a whole. There will be 2 different trips that we'll make out here during that time period. The first one will be a continuation of those growth and land use discussions. So we'll take what we learned in trip 2, we'll put together some different scenarios for how that growth maybe should be contained, managed, and organized in the future, and we'll bring those ideas back to Kyle and get refinement of those ideas. The 4th trip also in that time period will focus on implementation. So one of the most important elements of any comprehensive plan is the implementation section because it is the how to get to the why. Cities spend a lot of time on the why, but unfortunately too often there's not enough time spent on actionable steps that can be achieved in order to make that vision a reality. And so we try to start that earlier in the process. We feel that that's really critical to also get buy-in from your community, as your community has a lot of ideas about how to make things happen here locally. So we'll focus on all of that in trip 4. As we move into the summer next year, we'll be moving into the 4th phase, which is the prioritization phase. And that's taking all of the ideas, suggestions that we have gathered in the previous phases and prioritizing those using the public to understand what are the things that are top of mind, what are the things that are short-term, immediate projects, what are things that are more longer-term, require more preparation and perhaps coordination of you, the city council, maybe other boards and commissions and administrators. We'll also be working on helping the staff identify how to track and report results. So it's really important that you not only have a plan to move forward, but that you're able to have a reporting mechanism both for the community so that there is a sense of transparency and accountability for the community to see what's happening, what the progress is on some of these highly identified priorities, and for you to build your body of work essentially every year. The final plan draft will also be produced at that time. And then that leads us into the final phase, the adoption phase, which will be in September and October of next year. Obviously, at this point, we're saying September, October, because it will depend on the actual meeting dates for you all as well as the city council. So we'll use that and fine tune that closer to. The 5th trip that we'll be here for is obviously for the adoption meetings themselves, but also to tie up any loose ends to make sure the staff is really comfortable with the final product, that we can help guide them with any assistance that they might require or request in order to allow them to have a very smooth transition into utilizing that plan for decision making. We will also have the Community Summit, which is really an opportunity for people to, number one, celebrate that you've made it this far in the process, but more importantly, to start identifying ways that they can plug into the effort. So for the community to really be engaged in efforts like this, they really not only need to understand the path forward, but they need to understand how they fit into it in some way. And there truly is a place for everyone in the execution of a plan of this magnitude. So that will really be a big effort in that phase to make sure that we communicate that clearly, that we work with the city to make sure it's very obvious what that pathway is for people that truly want to be involved, that we have a way for local organizations, associations, other important groups, some of which we'll talk about tonight with you all, hopefully, and you can help us identify some of those, and making sure that they understand that they have a seat at a table to implement the plan and understand kind of what's involved in that. So the next slide here is just very briefly summarizing the different roles, responsibilities, and communication paths forward. And for us, of course, the most important thing is we follow and maintain the schedule. We get you the product. We walk you through this as a guide and a counsel. We facilitate and lead the events that are happening locally. We prepare and provide you with deliverables throughout the process, respond to your questions, and essentially manage the overall project. So our point of contact with the city will be through the city staff, who will then disseminate information, of course, to all of you, which they already do well. It seems you have a very good working relationship with the staff, and that's very helpful. So staff has already done the lion's share of providing us the data and the tools that we'll need, but there will be some things throughout the process as you continue doing things like adopting your downtown plan and maybe some other elements that they'll keep us posted on. They are coordinating the arrangements for the different trips and the different events that we have, providing promotion and sponsorship of those. Feedback is really critical in this process, so especially as we approach the halfway mark going towards the end of the project, where we start to have elements that are deliverables that we need feedback on. The staff will, of course, be an important piece in that feedback, and of course helping us maintain that schedule. So where do you come in as the Planning and Zoning Commission, also known in this instance as the CPAC, or the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee? So you two will have a very important role in providing feedback on elements that we share. We'll disseminate to the staff, who of course will pass those along to all of you and collect those comments so that we can make sure that we're updating things accordingly. We also ask that you help us with providing promotion for the different events that are happening. Already we've seen some of this happening. You pushed the word out about what was happening yesterday and today, and that's going to be very helpful. We ask that you attend and participate as much as you're able to, and of course, you have the formal recommendation for council at the end of this process, which is of paramount importance. The city council, of course, will have some of the same roles and responsibilities in helping us promote, providing feedback, et cetera. And of course, they are the formal action on the plan for adoption. And the citizens are mentioned last, but they are certainly not least. They are, of course, the foundation for this planning document and will serve as an important check throughout the entire process, giving us feedback and information. So the trip that we had this week, here's just a brief synopsis of it. We're wrapping it up with you all tonight. Yesterday morning, we spent a great amount of time touring the city, getting a lot of the photographs and research that we'll need to form a foundation for the plan. We were unable to meet with the Chamber of Commerce due to some timing and scheduling issues, but we are working with the city to get that reestablished as quickly as possible. We did spend some time with your staff, really getting to understand how the current plan is working or not working so well for them, what are areas of improvement that we need to carry over into the production of this document. And we had the community kickoff last night at the park. We had a good turnout there, had a series of different stations. We find that when it comes to doing the engagement for each of these trips, we always start with identifying what the purpose of the engagement is, and then we schedule and identify and select the different types of engagement methods we'll use around that. Today, we spent a good amount of time talking to your public. So we started at a local coffee shop. We had lunch just down the street at the pie shop, and then we were back at the park again this afternoon. In between those times, we did, as I mentioned, go to some different local businesses and put out some of these cards and ask them to share with their patrons. Everyone we spoke to was very happy to do that, very happy to share the information. And so we're wrapping up our trip with this evening. So, what to expect for the remainder of our time tonight? We understand it's evening, it's dark out, you've already had a long day, so we're going to try to not keep you too late tonight, but we're going to try to make the most of the time that we have with you. So, what we ask of you in this process is that you jump in and participate with us. The faster we move through things, the faster we get you out of here, but we want to make sure that we cover all of the bases. So, a couple of things that we're going to do tonight. First of one is we're going to start with getting some help from you through an asset mapping exercise. So it's important for us as consultants coming into a community to have our own sort of outside looking in perspective on identifying assets that are local, but it's very crucial that we mirror that and pair it with the identification of assets that the community shares us with. So your citizens have helped us. They've been part of a similar piece of this. We're going to do a pretty intensive amount of time working on this tonight. And then if we have time at the end, we also want to spend a little time getting you to help us identify some local organizations, groups, service organizations, clubs, things of that nature, so that we can make sure we're as comprehensive as possible in this comprehensive planning process with getting the word out as widely and broadly as possible, and also helping us understand who the different community partners are. They may be partners that are currently active in partnership with the city in different ways, and they may be partners that are not necessarily engaged directly with the city, but represent opportunities to do so. What we find in our work often is that we are working in communities that are resource strapped and time constrained, and that really is something that we all share in common. So how do we deal with that? One of the ways that we deal with that is to help get a good, solid inventory of what's available in the community and help make those connections that will help you do your work more efficiently and effectively as you're implementing the plan. So I'm going to ask my team to go ahead and start setting up. The exercise we're going to walk you through, we'll have a series of boards, and we're just going to listen, take notes, answer questions that you have, but we really are here to listen to you first and foremost and just sort of guide and facilitate the conversation. So this is the most that you're going to have to listen to us is what you've already endured. So thank you for your attention with that. The categories of assets we're going to walk through one at a time. We'll briefly kind of describe what that category is, and we'll ask you to kind of brainstorm. This is very informal. We want you to feel very comfortable, and I thank you for opening it that way. We do want it to feel very comfortable and informal. So I'm going to step away from the podium because that will certainly help with it feeling a little more informal, and we'll get started. Okay. Can you hear me clearly? Okay, great. So Marshall is going to be taking some photographs while we're doing this because, of course, we want to have some great photos for the plan. You all look very nice, so please don't be nervous about the photos. We're not trying to be invasive, but we like to capture the work really happening, right? That's what people are interested in. So the first group of assets that we want to talk about in Kyle is physical assets. And we want you to think for a few minutes and then start sharing with us what those physical assets are. That means different things to different people. So understand that some of these questions are vague on purpose because we want to hear how you interpret them. So for example, a physical asset might be a certain development that you have in the community. It might be a natural resource or feature of some sort. It can really be something that's man-made. It can be something that's natural, but it's really something physical that isn't something that you would see in other communities. So think about that for a minute. And we want to start with kind of hearing what you think some of those things might be. We're going to list all of these, and of course, we'll be building on collecting this information and kind of synthesizing it, and this will inform kind of our next trip. So know that we're not doing this just to do it. We will be using all the information that you're giving us tonight.
I have a question.
Please.
So we have a set of public assets. We also have private citizen,
Uh-huh.
privately owned assets. Are
Yes.
you including those two, or just you're thinking more about what we have?
They could be public or private. That's an excellent question. Yes. The only parameters here are really the ones we choose to put on them. So any thoughts, any examples, anything that jumps to mind immediately?
Please.
I'll say the new Veterans Memorial Park, I think, is a great physical asset.
That's a great example. We got some good pictures in that area, and that was a great example of one. Okay, fantastic.
Well, from an infrastructure perspective, we have a well-developed road system, and our utilities, if I understand it all correctly, are keeping up with our growth. So, you know,
Good example.
just a modern suite of, water, wastewater, gas distribution.
Okay.
all of that.
Commissioners, can you please turn your mics on, just so the recording and people at home can hear what you're saying as well? Thank you.
Yes, let me repeat what we've got just to make sure everyone heard that. So we've got Veterans Memorial Park. We also have a road system and utility system. Good examples.
I would also note the Mary Kyle Hardson Park here where you've spent.
Yeah,
time the last
absolutely. That's a
couple of
great
days.
asset. We were so pleased to see how active it was at all times of day and night, and it's just a really well-designed park. Great. What else?
I think we have a nice little like community square.
Okay.
That is, I think is a, I mean, you see, it feels very common in Texas, but like, it is something that stands out to have that kind of space.
It
And
is.
there's a lot of opportunity along that space, unlike a lot of spaces which are already taken up by things.
Mm-hmm. Community square, excellent example. Okay.
We have some soil conservation districts here,
Oh,
which
okay.
are preserved space, yeah.
I don't know that we see. These are good examples of things we may not have thought of. Soil conservation districts. Other thoughts?
Plum Creek Golf Course, it's a public course.
Okay. Plum Creek Golf Course.
Yeah, and then Plum Creek itself kind of runs along
That's a good
or
point.
through these cities. So we have the park on the east side of the town that's
Plum Creek and Plum
along
Creek Golf
the,
Course. The creek itself.
Plum Creek.
as
So
well.
it's great, and then can also be an issue with with flooding. So that's kind of a good.
Good
and
point.
bad, so.
Good point. Assets require management. That's a great point.
If I may interject just real quick, is this primarily for the commissioners, or if we have stuff we'd like to chime in as well, are we allowed to?
Please,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah,
We're all friends
y'all keep
here.
going Otherwise, but we can wait a moment.
I haven't had the pleasure of using it yet, but apparently we have a pool that's available for use. So
Okay.
That's kind of cool.
Something I don't think I've heard anybody mention yet, or at least seen on the stickers either. It was like, we have a rail line that runs to the middle of Kyle, and that gives us a whole lot of options of when it comes to transportation options in the future.
It does. It does. Proximity to rail line. Okay. Good example.
Does proximity to things help? Like, we're very close to hill country.
Yes.
Beautiful places. We're nicely located, close to a lot of things.
That's a great example. Yes, it doesn't always have to be in the city limits. It's still a selling point, still an attraction. Absolutely.
Got a good modern hospital, Ascension Seton.
That's a great
Hospital, yeah.
asset. Modern hospital. You guys are doing great. The challenge is to fill the page, so use that as your
Yeah.
goal, right?
We do have the overpasses sort of connecting the east and west. So this
Okay.
is, having it makes it easier. We do have the train track, so that becomes an issue here in downtown. So
But yeah, a set of access
Right.
to
So-
Access is
35,
a big
so, yeah.
asset. Absolutely.
I have a campus for Austin Community College.
ACC.
There you go.
We went out there yesterday as well. They were flying a drone that was about the size of that table. It was really, it was really cool. Okay.
Looking at the larger connections here, we're in the middle of that intercity zone
Yes.
between San Antonio and Austin. So pulling back to 30,000 feet, you can see that we have a unique geographic space.
That's important. Definitely something to take into consideration when you're planning for the future. Agreed.
San Antonio.
Yeah.
Great.
I believe we have a performing arts center.
Yes.
Okay. Performing Arts Center. And is that a public facility or private facility?
Public.
It-
It's a public facility. The
it-
Hays County.
It's part of the school district, isn't it?
Yes.
It belongs to the school district.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's something that enriches our community that is a physical asset.
It is. It is. You're right.
Yeah.
Lake Kyle is a good resource, both in size and the lake itself. I believe it's under construction now, but it should be open again soon.
Okay. Like that one.
I would also say we've mentioned I-35 a lot, but I think also State Highway 21
Okay.
is a really big physical asset for us as well.
Great. Any other thoughts? Would you guys like to weigh in?
Well, I think they touched on all the ones that I was
On your checklist? They checked everything off your checklist? Good, good.
just visually going around to the city thinking of things.
In economic development, you probably think about this stuff pretty often. Yeah, she's got her checklist always ready. Yeah, these are great.
I got a couple.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me all right? I think you can.
Yes, sir.
The burgeoning brick and mortar district, Heroes Memorial Park's part of that. But we're constantly coordinating with the landowners and their representatives to make that happen. La Verde Park associated with that as well. That's getting closer to completion. Our school system is pretty robust. We have, I don't even know how many elementary schools. A lot, though.
You have a lot. We noticed that.
Yeah, we have we're one of the larger school districts in the area. Maybe not compared to the state. There's some significantly larger ones, but we have a very robust school district, and there's a lot of public support for it as well. So.
Okay. Fantastic.
Oh, Dry River District as well, up there where Evo
Okay.
is. It's turning over fast from a shopping center perspective. They have a little bit of multifamily on the back, but that's where Costco is going and everything like that. So people are pretty excited about that from a citizenry perspective.
Sure, sure. Okay. Great list. Anything you think we missed so far? Another way to think about this sometimes is to think about if you're describing Kyle to someone or someone's visiting you, what are the things that bear mention when you're talking to others or showing others around?
Well, I usually talk about the warehouse space. We've got an enormous amount of fulfillment centers, distribution centers, and
Okay.
warehouse space, which
Okay,
is
that's great.
all privately owned.
Good one. Any other thoughts?
So I'll jump in and say we have
Yes, thank
easily
you.
developable land and a good amount of it as well.
That's a great one. I didn't want to call on you directly and put you on the spot. Thank you for jumping in. Developable land. Okay. Excellent.
I do think it's nice that our downtown has a traditional grid pattern because that gives us a lot to
We
kind
do
of play with
too.
going forward.
Spoken like a true planner. We love that grid. Any other thought?
I mean, I would say, this sounds a little weird, but like I think our development standards, as far as like the building standards in Kyle, are really good, because like every time we see new development, like, and even some of the older development, like they still look good. And like that is something that you don't always see in the
Like a
city.
quality, from
Yeah,
a
there
quality
is a good
standpoint of
quality.
construction. Definitely worth mentioning.
We have a really robust and highly educated workforce that allows us to attract those higher paying jobs that we're seeing more and more of.
Okay.
Considering Austin's considered the Silicon Hills and all that. So it's growing a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah, we may put it on the next board. Okay, any other thoughts on physical assets? We can always come back if you think of something later, but we can also keep moving and go in a different direction. Okay, all right, let's go on. And if you think of anything else, just call out and we will add it. Okay, so the next category of assets we're going to talk about is economic assets. Again, there's a lot of interpretation to be made here, but that's what we want to hear is what that means to you. So some examples would include notable industries that are present in Kyle. Businesses that are large employers might be another example. You know, things like certain groups of patrons or spenders, small business. Yeah, let's put that one down so we don't forget educated workforce. Selling Kyle, how do you sell that to others when it comes to economics? What are some of the major employers here?
The hospital system.
Okay, hospital system.
The public school district, since, I mean,
Sure, okay. Public school district.
yes. Hayes, CISD.
Right. Go ahead. I know you have a list of major employers.
Go. Hello? Okay. Well, for those of you I haven't met, I'm Victoria Vargas. I'm the Director of Economic Development. I met some of you recently at a conference, so nice to see you again. HEB is also one of our major employers, and I think they're a huge asset to our community. If we could get 2 HEBs in Kyle, that'd be amazing.
Sure.
Our citizens would be happy.
I'm sure they would.
And other economic drivers are Tesla suppliers. We have 2 of them here in Kyle, and also Samsung supplier that we have and hope to attract more. That's what we're seeing. And we're also seeing several food and beverage manufacturers that are also locating here and that are still interested in coming.
That spark any thoughts for anybody?
We have the distribution centers, so a large presence with Amazon, FedEx.
That on this board as well. That definitely fits both categories. Any other thoughts about large employers? Maybe businesses in general? Any businesses that are either significant contributors, significantly located. You could take that to mean a lot of different things.
We have a place across the street that I always get the name mixed up. It's either Rail House or Rail Yard, which is a pretty unique nightlife spot with entertainment as well.
Okay, a unique type of business. That's another good way to look at this. Okay, great. We want to get that right.
Yes.
I always think like Logan's Roadhouse, and then I'm like, no, it can't be Rail House.
We do have the pie
So I'll
company.
stay a couple of years on Target.
Someone say Target?
I'm so, go ahead, Vice Chair Chase. What'd you say?
I'd say just the obvious ones: Target, Lowe's, Walmart, the hospital, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Walmart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was mentioning the pie company just because it is iconic for Kyle. You know, when people see
Sure.
Kyle, they think of that
Of
giant
course.
pie.
That's a good way to look at it too. Are there other things like that that you think are really representative of Kyle that make it special or unique? Features that you wouldn't see in other communities, maybe?
There have been the balloon, I don't know what you would call it, the balloon fly-ins or get-togethers.
We have an annual balloon festival, like hot air
Okay.
balloon.
Okay.
Yeah, pie in the sky.
Okay. So a good tourism driver.
And I also don't know if this is a part of this, but our city's Christmas lights.
Okay.
You know, it brings people. We'll have conversations with people out there, and they'll say they came in from a different town. They had dinner here. They came for the Christmas lights.
Really cool.
The city's Christmas lights is a big draw.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely legitimate. Sounds like it has a good effect.
I think one of the biggest economic assets Kyle has, I think it's very underutilized. It's the gateway to the hill country, really. For
Okay.
like for urban communities, like we're probably as close as you get to the hill country without being San Marcos or in San Antonio. Like we're still in the Austin area.
Yeah, that's a great point. Gateway to the hill country, I like that.
Can y'all remind me what category we're on before?
Economic.
Okay. Kyle Market Days.
Okay, that's a good example. Kyle Market Days.
Our proximity to ABIA and the San Marcos Regional Airport.
Great point.
Throw your Uber 3.14 in there.
We have an Uber 3.14 project that we
Do what? Oh, what's the name of the airport?
ABIA.
ABIA, and
Austin
then
Bergstrom.
also San Marcos Airport.
San Marcos
We're kind of in
Airport.
between the two.
Okay.
Yeah. And San Marcos Airport is an economic asset because there's that Redbird that's located here because that's where it's going to be.
And then Uber 3.14. Awesome.
The
Okay.
Kyle Flea Market, I mean, it draws, I mean,
yes.
it's always,
Say that.
I mean, it's right off the interstate and it's every Saturday and Sunday, there's tons of people out there. so
Yeah, that's a good one.
That brings in a lot of people.
Any
I
other
think
things?
one of the dominant uniquenesses of Kyle is that it doesn't have a specific like set of things. It's already established that is dominant.
Okay.
Like that is a huge asset because when we're going through the comp plan, we really get the chance to talk a lot more about what that looks like for City of Kyle.
Okay. Yeah, can you summarize that one more time for us?
I was hoping y'all would be helping me out.
We want to make sure we capture it perfectly.
Yeah, someone will find it.
An established city with a unique identity.
There, see, that's a great summary. Other sentences. I mean, this is great, right? Any other thoughts about economic assets before we move on?
I mean, I think to go back to Commissioner Chase's point, the open space for development is a huge asset.
Hey, that's a good one. Good point. Big impact on economy. Okay.
To build upon that, I have
Please.
to do my vibe spiel.
Do it.
So we haven't really realized it yet from a fiscal perspective, but I anticipate the unique projects that come along with interfacing with the Vibe Trail. We have a lot of projects that are vertical mixed use related, have event lawns and what have you that are associated with it, that quite honestly developers see the dollar signs, so they're willing to go the extra mile.
Sure. You all chuckled like you've heard We'll get excited about the bike trail before.
That would fit on the last board as well.
Yeah, the back.
We
Yeah.
just
You're right.
Yeah,
Didn't
physical.
mention it then.
You're right. We'll add that right now.
On your board, you have spending power. How do you mean that? Because that's something we haven't talked about.
And some of the cities we've done this exercise with, some of the assets that they have shared that from an economy standpoint will be certain subgroups of people spending money in the community. It might be tourism. It might be, certain demographic. For example, one city we worked in recently talked about how families and parents had a lot of spending power in their community because they were a community whose demographics skewed that direction. They didn't have a lot of single professionals. They didn't have a lot of people, empty nesters, but they had a ton of an influx of families coming in. So that was something they wanted to focus on.
So kind of, okay. Well, building on the educated workforce that you actually brought up earlier, the pandemic has put us in a very interesting position where a lot of people who used to live in Kyle and work in Austin now can work from home. And so they're here, and that spending power stays here because they're not driving into Austin to do shopping or activities or things like that.
That's a good one.
We hope.
That's a good one.
We hope.
We hope.
Yeah.
Picking up on that theme, though, on the physical asset side, we also have a new controlled access median highway, which is 1626 45 in Mopac, which goes
Okay.
all the way from Kyle into West Austin. And that's a real asset.
Definitely.
I have a short list whenever y'all are good to go.
A short list, you promise?
Well, our IT person
Yeah.
on the meeting actually has some ideas
I
too.
love it.
So,
Please share. Please share.
Yeah, let's hear it.
we have something called good. One of them's physical. The Ash Pavilion, which is a roller skating rink esque. It's called the Ash ASH Pavilion. And
Okay.
it's for like street hockey and what have you as well.
Oh, great.
And then you can add Evo theaters on there as well. And then and we're building the public safety center.
Yeah.
So that's going to be
Public
finished
safety
in
center.
quarter one, I believe, at the end of it, approximately,
Okay.
of 23.
Great.
And then one of the big, massive draws that over the last decade that pulled people here, and this is over to the economic side, and this is from Victoria, it was the affordability of our housing that we had. It was, over the last 10 years, very affordable compared to Austin. That gap is closing.
Sure.
So we do, we need to be very cognizant of how we can maintain that balance of equitable housing costs across the board for everybody who wants to live here.
That's a good way to look at
What
that.
did you say? Okay. Yeah.
Great suggestions.
So one more for physical. I can't remember if we put it on there.
Okay.
Looks like it's called Greg Clark Park.
Okay.
I just call it the
I
park.
don't think
but
we have
apparently
that
it has
on
a
there yet.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pool, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But they've got like a basketball, like covered basketball courts
And
and
you said you refer to it how locally?
the Greg with two G's at the
Okay.
end. Greg Clark with an E at the end. Greg Clark Park.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, our public parks
Yeah.
are really good.
You do. You do. You have a great park system.
This one's more of a regional park, but the Blanca River / 5 Mile Dam.
Okay.
It's between San Marcos,
Is that
Blanca
in
River / 5 Mile Dam.
Blanco River Ranch, that property.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you. We have a project called Six Creeks / Blanca River Ranch,
Okay.
And they are very high-end homes, but they are building a section of our bypass that we're going to have. They're going to have an economic powerhouse out there from a retail perspective, plus a corporate campus and eventually a resort type deal overlooking
Wow.
the Blanket River up on the bluff.
That's fantastic. Okay.
I think I would also add for physical and economic, honestly, is like the diverse selection of housing that we have. Like we have quite a good different like options from low end to high end to apartments, and like that's definitely something that stands out to me.
When you
If-
say a diversity of housing, do you mean price point? Do you mean different types of housing
Both, honestly.
styles? Okay.
I remember what I was going to say.
Okay.
So under, well, it could go either under, well, it's more economic at this point. We
Okay.
have in various stages upwards of 50,000 residential lots that are either from discussion points all the way up to houses coming out of the ground and everything in between over
Okay.
the next 10 to 20 years, probably closer to 20 years.
Okay.
So. Average household income is 83,000.
Okay. Average household income is 83,000. And then I think this is 50,000 lots to come online. Okay. Any other thoughts about economic assets before we move on to the next category? Okay. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is community assets. So these can be things like local networks that exist in your community, different organizations and groups. So when I was mentioning from the podium earlier that we really want to get a good inventory of these, think as broadly as you can about this. This is everything from, faith-based organizations to service organizations to nonprofits to, other charitable groups, youth groups and associations, pretty much anything under the sun. We want to capture as much as possible.
One thing that we have here is what's called the senior zone.
Okay.
Which is senior activities is housed out of the Creek Center.
We have
which you're probably
spoken
familiar
quite a
with.
bit with them. They were so impressive, the amount of activities that they're coordinating at any moment in time. Yeah, that's a big asset. Okay,
Chamber of Commerce.
good one. What else?
We have GSMP, which is the Greater San Marcos Partnership.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And it's actually Victoria can explain it better than I can. I know what it is.
Greater San Marcos. Yeah, Greater San Marcos Partnership. Good one. Okay.
That would fall under, I guess, economic assets as well
Okay.
that are, community-based because they help with recruitment for Hayes County, which includes the city of Kyle.
Okay.
So they are a huge asset
Yeah,
to
definitely.
us.
That would make it economic as well. Okay. What other groups or organizations locally?
There's a strong faith community here.
Okay.
Vibrant churches and youth groups.
Is there a
Support groups.
centralized, like a ministerial alliance or some organization that's centrally located, or are churches largely organized on their own?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, that's something.
What
for us
is
to learn
that
about.
church off Burleson that they have a lot of, like the food drives and things are there? I'm sorry,
St.
St.
The
Anthony's?
Cowboy Church.
Yeah.
Okay, St.
I would
Anthony's
say St.
Catholic.
Anthony's. is
Okay,
one of the
that's a
main
good
points.
one. Any other churches that you can think of that have active?
The they call it United Methodist Church. They do
Okay.
they have food pantry and a lot of just youth outreach group. That,
Excellent.
Reminds me.
Okay.
I've
there's
got
also the the Hayes Latinos United, which serves
Okay.
the underprivileged, sort of underserved community. on the
Sounds
east
like a
side
good
of
one.
Kyle. So it's a big.
Great
It's big.
resource. Okay.
I don't know if this fits here, but I drove by last year. There was I guess like a drive-through nativity like Bible story at the Fellowship Church at Plum Creek. That
Fellowship
looked super
Church.
cool.
At Plum Creek.
The Police Academy Alumni Association. I
Okay.
think that's what they're called. It is a group of citizens from Kyle who support our police department.
Like that. Police Academy.
It's like Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association.
Interesting thing to have an alumni association for. That's kind of unique.
There's the veterans.
VFW.
just across the
Yes.
street.
Good one.
There's also the Citizens on Patrol.
Okay.
And another, it's, I guess, the, what is it? For the Love of Go. It's they promote running, but it's also a good way to work with the local school district to raise funds for the individual school. I mean, so
Okay.
it started off pretty small, but it's become a big deal. Like there's pretty much every weekend there's a race going on in Kyle.
Wow.
For the love of go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Geo. So,
We have our Hay CIC, the school board is actually pretty active in the community.
Okay. That's a good one.
And then we have our ED&T board, Economic Development and Tourism. It's a
ED&T
mix
board.
of chamber members, but also a mix of variety of industries here in Kyle
Okay.
or in the region.
Excellent.
One thing that's obviously oriented to the youth is youth soccer. And
Okay.
there's the Lone Star Soccer Organization and
Lone
perhaps
Star.
one other
Soccer organization.
that play in Kyle and could be the focus of a lot of youth activity.
Absolutely.
Traditionally, kayak, which is Kyle Area Youth
Advisory council.
Advisory Council. Thank you.
Okay. This is kayak with a C.
I don't know how active they are at this moment following the pandemic, but pre-pandemic they were super active.
Okay. KAYAC.
Would something like next door fit on this kind of page?
It absolutely could. Sure. That's a growing network in a lot of communities, honestly. Mm-hmm.
I mean, my neighborhood has one. A Facebook
We've seen mention of this one. We can't wait to go home and check it out. Yeah.
There we go.
Everything in Kyle
And then
is
there's-
big. Each
Hi
Yeah.
everybody on Facebook. I'll see you tomorrow.
each subdivision pretty much has their own.
Okay. Like
but
an
everything-
HOA type.
Yes,
Okay.
each HOA.
Does the city have a formalized process of registration or something along those lines for HOAs, or a formalized list of them?
I don't know if we have a formalized registration. I know we don't have that, but our communications department has contacts for
Okay.
most of the HOAs.
So that would be another big one.
Most of the neighborhoods have active HOAs. There's a few that
That's
have
great.
dissolved their own HOAs.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Any other social media groups of note? What about service organizations? Kiwanis, Lions, Rotary. What's active here locally?
The Masons are pretty active.
Masons, okay.
We have a Lions Club too, don't we? Yeah.
I don't.
Rotary, yeah. no,
Yeah.
no,
Rotary, okay.
It's a Rotary Club.
Awesome. Any others?
Do we have scouts here? Sorry, I don't have kids. I don't know what the youths do.
That's a good
like
question,
scouting
though.
or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts kind of stuff.
Does anybody know?
There is. I don't know. I don't
How
know to what
active it
level how
is.
active they are.
Okay.
I'm completely out of the loop on that, so I have no idea.
It's okay.
But
That's
I do
something
know
we
they
can look
exist.
into.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just put scouts. What about other offshoots of youth things? 4-H, FFA, anything like that locally?
Hayes County has a good FFA, like Lawrence kids are involved.
Okay. Great. Charitable organizations, nonprofits?
the Pause Shelter of Central Texas.
Okay.
PAWS. Pause.
Oh, okay. That helps. Act it out. Good. Any others that you can think of?
I don't know if
Wheels.
anybody mentioned the VFW.
Oh.
Yes, we do have that on here.
Group.
Thank you for mentioning it, though.
Meals on Wheels and
Okay.
AMVETS.
Okay.
And Hayes County Food Bank.
Hayes County Food Bank. Okay. Any special interest groups of any kind? Recreation, affiliated by age, maybe, interest?
I don't know about that specifically, but I know that like all the apartment communities along Cromwell have really active like management associations, except for
Oh, that's a
one.
good one.
Not management, not associations, but management. They do a really good job trying to engage.
That's great.
What the residents do is,
Sure.
dependent, except for one.
Okay, so resident groups, that's a good one.
I'm sure there's more than we can name, but I bet there's a lot of active political groups here based on the number of signs that we see outside
Good
City Hall
point.
tonight.
You do have a few signs.
To say that.
Both Republicans and Democrats have a group.
Okay.
An active group.
Okay, excellent. Okay, any other thoughts on this?
I would say one of our big community assets is we don't have to struggle for young adults. Like there are a lot of young adults in our community, and like that is a big thing, coming from a community where like we spent a lot of time being like, how do you keep 18-year-olds here?
Right.
Like, we don't
Is
have
there
to
like
worry.
a young professionals group? Anything along those lines, maybe?
There should be, but
Okay, okay. Great. Any other thoughts on that one? We can come back if something strikes you.
Well, we can organize the physical environment, which is going to be a big enough challenge, but I think one of the bigger challenges is really integrating the community around these kinds of voluntary organizations, because really that's, in the end, the community.
It is.
That is the community.
You're
And
right.
how welcoming it is, how civil it is, and so forth is going to be based on really these volunteer groups functioning quite well and even interdependently in some cases.
Yes, yes, that's
So
a,
I don't know that's an item to list, but that was just my thought about all of this. It's the
that's
biggest
definitely one of our goals. We, one of the things we try to do is help communities make progress with the resources they have now, not leave you with a list of things that you need more time, money, people, and so these are key to doing that.
I have a couple other items.
Please.
Debbie keeps reminding me that Grant is also still on the line from our IT, or
Excellent.
communications technically. So there's we have the Hayes County Historic Commission.
Okay, great.
I don't know if they're under, organizations groups, okay. We have a group, or I don't know if it's a group, but it's been over the last few years, it's called the Peace and Progress for Kyle.
Okay,
And it's where minorities get a chance to have equal dialogue with administration of the city, the police force, and everything. Where
Great.
they're all just sitting down figuratively
Mm-hmm.
to just hash things out and try to make sure everybody's on the same wavelength.
it's a great
So,
example.
from a nonprofit, we have the Kyle Thrift Store, which helps fund
Saw
the
that.
library.
Okay. Any other activist groups related to certain cause?
We are served by, I think they call themselves the Greater San Marcos Salvation Army.
Okay, that's a good example.
I have another one. I think it's important to engage our county commissioners, our Hays County judge, and then especially the county commissioners that have, that are in our district, you know,
Yes.
in Kyle. So
Great one.
because they participate with us, they are an economic asset because they participate with us on incentives on some projects. So it's good to get their feedback as
We'll
well.
put that one on both. Excellent. Are there any other city boards, commissions, advisory groups that we need to keep in mind?
Let me, so going back to Hays County real quick, there's the Train Depot Commission. I don't know their official name, but it's for this historic train depot right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think they're probably a subset of the Historic Commission. Oh, the Catherine Ann Porter House as well.
Okay.
And the log cabin. Claiborne House group. Yeah, but they have a group that maintains and manages them as well. So they can go under both.
Okay, Catherine Ann Porter House, and then you
The-
mentioned one more.
The Claiborne log cabin. It's the
Claiborne.
It's the original dog trot cabin that the original family, the Kyle family, had out there west of town.
Oh, okay.
So. Mhm.
Okay.
Let me pull up the boards and commissions real quick.
Okay. While Will's pulling that up, any other
This
thoughts
might
from you
sound
all?
a little off the wall, but Kyle Cemetery is a
It's
actually
not off the
beautiful,
wall. Not at
beautiful
all.
cemetery in a rural setting.
Someone mentioned farmers market a moment ago. Is there a group associated with that? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Is there a group that is in charge of that specifically?
The city hosts it.
The city
It's,
hosts it, okay.
Yeah, the Parks Department. All right, so I got the boards and commissions ready. So we have
Great.
the Arts Commission.
Okay.
And you know what? The Train Depot Board is us.
Oh, congratulations.
I was thinking it was an offshoot of the Hays County Historic Commission. The Library Board.
Put city next to it. Library board.
Yeah.
We have the Civil Service Commission.
Okay.
We have, and I'm just going down the list. So some of these may fit, some of them may not as much, but Ethics Commission,
Okay.
the Kyle Housing Authority,
Okay.
Parks and Recreation Board. We've already said ET.
Got it.
Every 5 years, we have the Kyle Charter Review Commission, but
Okay.
it may not be as applicable, so.
What is it called? The Kyle Leadership Academy?
Okay.
So,
Kyle Leadership Academy. We didn't talk about the arts. Do you have any arts, dance, music related local groups you can think of? It's a pretty good list, so I think we have a really good start. Okay, let's move on to the next category, which is going to be assets that are related to the identity of Kyle. So obviously identity in a community is a big part of planning for the future. So examples here might include things like events. You've already touched on a few that we might put on this board as well. Local events that you're known for, things that are notable to Kyle's heritage and history, maybe important people that were here, different community values that you think are prevalent in the community and widely expressed, things of that nature. So let's simplify this a little bit. Why don't we start with just talking heritage, historical? What are things that are notable about the history of Kyle that you think are key to its identity?
Being sited on major rail and road routes.
Okay. Rail and road routes.
To piggyback on Steve's comment there, City of Kyle was platted, it's a rail town.
Mm-hmm.
Platted in 1880. And I think the city was established officially in the early 1900s.
Okay.
But the community was established, well, Kyle was established in 1880, but there was the Mountain City community prior to that. And even prior to that was the Kyle family
Okay.
down southwest of
Interesting.
So, whenever Kyle was established, it had the draw with the rail. Most of the community members from Mountain City moved to Kyle. And then, I don't know how many decades later, the Subdivision Mountain City popped up, and then they also created themselves their own little town
Okay.
in honor of that, if I understand correctly. We got is this on? Oh, man, I'm sorry, I thought this was on. We have the auction oak, which is where everybody bought their, the lots when they went for sale from the railroad. What else? There's this blue book called The History of Kyle from 1880 to 1980.
Uh-huh.
It's at the public library.
Okay.
So
Well, it sounds like a
for
good
those
resource
that
for
are
us to look
listening,
at.
and
One of the-
that encapsulates it. It's
Great.
a pretty good read.
One of the connections to Kyle is Kyle Field, which is obvious to some of us who've been around a little bit. So I always thought about how do we get the Aggies involved?
Yeah.
I feel so red ass right now. This is great.
Any other kind of heritage things that you think are key to know about Kyle?
So Old Stagecoach Road was the stagecoach route from Austin to San Antonio
Okay.
prior to any state highways. And
That's interesting.
there's even the remains of a well for that's where the cavalry stopped and where the stagecoach stopped over on the northwest side of town too. So on
Okay.
a property. So
Sounds like you've read the blue book, Will.
that fact I didn't know about till last week.
Ah.
Oh yeah, the old bridge. So there's the first concrete bridge in Hayes County is in Kyle.
Okay.
So it's slightly northeast of HEB, and it's on Kyle Crossing. And if you're wondering why we never widen the bridge there, it's because we can't. It's historic. We can't touch it.
Got it.
We can put some asphalt down on the road, and that's about it.
Okay.
It was built in the early 1900s. It was Highway 2 at that point, from Fort Worth to San Antonio for the postal route. So
Wow. Okay. So we got some good things
So
here.
Kyle
Go ahead.
does have only one of three bridges actually over the train tracks, so that's a big deal. So
Okay.
I mean, you're not held up with the, as you can see when the train passes here, I mean, it'll create a backlog of traffic. So
Right.
we have it out by the HEB, so it helps. So
Okay.
it's kind of a unique.
Kayla was, tell us if we're monopolizing this, by the way. We want y'all to have some input too. But
You're
Kayla
monopolizing
mentioned,
this.
yeah, fair. She had mentioned the Krug Center. It was, if I remember correctly, I have to go back and read that blue book, but I believe it was built as an opera house
Okay.
right there on the square originally. And then it transitioned over the years to different uses, and it's a city facility now. It was the city hall prior to this city hall.
Okay.
So
Regarding events, last week we had a bicycling event go through town, I think. Anyway, this Old Stagecoach Road, this is what made me think of it. Old Stagecoach to San Marcos and so forth is, I think, pretty big with bicyclists, and I think that's going to be a future.
Okay.
It impacts those of us who live there, but it's going to be a bigger event.
That's a
in the
good
future.
example. Let's shift gears and go that direction a little bit. What are some local events that you think are notable about Kyle?
The Pie in the Sky, the Founders Day Parade.
Okay. Pie in the Sky, Founders Day Parade.
The Christmas light reveal every year.
Okay.
I always call it wrong. It's Santa's Arrival.
Santa's Arrival.
I mean, that's thousands of people show up for
I
that.
love that. Okay. Good.
Yeah, and then what the city does, I mean, they drive out through the fire department has Santa go through each neighborhood, which is it's a big thing
That's
for
fun.
kids, you know.
Okay.
It's really neat.
Yeah, it's part of the Santa's Arrival. Okay.
So
What other events?
Veterans Day Parade.
Veterans Day Parade. Okay. Festivals.
Do we do fireworks on July 4th?
Yeah, as long as
Yeah.
I'm always volunteering in Austin with the symphony, so I haven't gotten to see them, but I think
Yes.
you've got them. Okay.
Fireworks.
Fireworks.
4th of July.
Yeah.
Okay. 4th of July fireworks.
And New Year's.
Wait, when do we do
Okay.
New Year's?
What?
Does it New
It-
Year's?
Will,
It
Will
was-
says we're going to start doing fireworks on New
No.
Year's.
4th of July.
I think everyone heard you commit to that, though.
7, I've never seen any fireworks on.
Okay. Any other parades, festivals, cultural events, neighborhood events?
So I don't know who's in charge of doing it, but on Veterans Drive, I've seen the street lined with American flags on different holidays, and that is really special.
Like
to
Veterans
me.
Day or
Yeah.
Memorial Day, maybe? Okay.
There's a Veterans Day Parade as well.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. The Veterans Day Parade.
The Plum Creek Front Porch Days is actually pretty well
I
attended.
was gonna mention
Plum Creek
had a
Front Porch
marathon.
Days, yes.
Okay, Plum Creek what?
Front Porch Days.
Front Porch Days.
And then,
They
Yeah,
also have
tell
a
us
half
about that.
marathon in it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
They
that's not a
introduced
reason
that's-
to be
yeah,
there, but the front porch part sounds great.
For the love of for the love of go, yeah. they do
Okay,
races
that's
like
their
that.
race. Okay. Okay.
And then
Cool.
they also do Hootenanny on the Hill.
Yeah.
Hootenanny
So
on the
that-
hill.
It's like just one in the spring, one in the fall. kind of thing,
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
Twice a year.
So,
It's
and
part
that's
of their-
specifically the Plum Creek neighborhood.
I bet you never thought you'd write that down.
Hootenanny.
Hootenanny.
That's great.
I don't know how to spell it either. It's okay.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, hoot. Yeah, hoot. The shirts are awesome. They're really small. It's worth the $20. And
Okay.
you're on.
I imagine there's lots of little like HOA events. I went to a HOA meeting the other night and they were talking about how they recently had a little like fall festival. in the
Okay.
neighborhood.
That's a good
I
one.
imagine it's fairly common.
Any Halloween trunk or treats or something like that?
Center Street trick or treat.
Okay. Do you guys participate in National Night Out?
Yes.
Okay.
City council moves their
Okay.
council meeting to account for it.
Great.
We have movies in the park.
Movies in the park, that's a good one.
Yeah, we have a polar plunge and a doggy dip as well.
I'm sorry, what?
We have a polar plunge.
Polar plunge and a doggy dip.
Yeah.
Okay. This is great. I didn't think about this when we were talking about organizations, but do you guys have a downtown or a small business organization? Vendors?
No, I think the chamber is more leading that.
Okay, okay. Just wanted to make
something
sure.
We definitely want to address in economic development, though, is
Okay.
more support for small businesses.
Got it.
And that'll be
I just want to note that this is the one that we've had the hardest time with, so I think that one of the assets that we have for identity is that with the growth, we have a chance to really define what Kyle is and what city we want in the future. I think that is an asset in itself. Like, I know all these things about story and heritage come into it, but also if we're struggling, it's a good time to define what that is. the
Sure.
purpose
Excellent point.
And the vision.
Yeah, that's a good segue. Let's talk a little bit about community values. You guys have constituents, people that you're talking with on a regular basis. What do you hear from the public about what is important to them from a value perspective?
I think security is a big value here.
Security?
Yeah, we have safe communities.
Yeah, that's a good one. Safety and security.
They there's a lot of traffic woes right now, if you will. So we're hopefully, well, everybody takes advantage of the voting to go vote for or against the bond. I can't say which one to vote for. But no, it's a big thing. As the community grows, of course, the city has a lot of trouble, as
Sure.
any city does, keeping up with public infrastructure related to that.
Definitely.
Back to the identifiable assets of the community, our bridges are very identifiable. They have brands on them from historic families that lived here.
Okay, that's a great one.
We were one of the first cities along 35 to actually brand our bridges and street names, and a lot of cities have since copied them.
That's a good one.
So one more identity thing, we put the pie in the sky on there, but I would also add just the pie shop itself. When you go in there, there's so much history in there. And there's also a really funny sign on Center Street that says, "I love pie so much," riffing off of the Austin "I love tacos so much." I think that's pretty cute.
That's cute. Yeah, we had fun looking at all the pictures today in the pie shop. There was a lot there. Any other value-related items?
I talked to a lot of people that are asking about, like, you know, like, what things to do and exciting things to do here. So I think that's definitely, like, people are looking to be out and involved in the community. I definitely think that's a value that I see out of folks in Kyle.
Yeah. That's a good one.
What I think none of us really want is we could name them, is to be like certain other suburbs that don't have any identity at all and didn't know what they were working with when they started.
So just
that's why I like this process.
part of the identity is just a desire to have an identity. Now, that's important. That's important.
We have some important natural spaces. The Soil Conservation District Number 1 is a registered World Wildlife Fund site, and it's also the second most productive site in terms of species of birds in the state.
Oh, that's interesting.
Do we have the vibe trail on this one yet?
No, we do not. Vibe Trail?
Steve, thank you. When you say so, the conservation site number 1 is that Plum Creek?
Like Neckley.
Yeah, there's all those like white egrets, or I'm getting the species wrong, I'm
Yes.
sure, but they
Great-
nest
great-
in
great
that giant
egrets,
bald cypress
yes.
right in the middle.
Yeah, and because there aren't that many wetlands in this area, it's a stopping place for migratory birds, so.
Interesting.
So they all come through there.
Okay. Learn a lot from you guys. What else? What would your neighbors and families and friends tell you is important to them about why they choose to stay in Kyle, or what attracts people to Kyle, do you think? Why here?
I think it's a combination of things. My
Okay.
neighbor moved from New York City, so I asked him why he came here, and he says, reasonable cost of housing.
Okay.
It's quiet and safe neighborhood.
Okay.
And not a big city, so away from the hustle and bustle and constant noise of the city.
Makes sense. What about the rest of you? What do you think?
I'm in Kyle because my son decided to live in Kyle, and he decided to raise his kids here.
Okay.
So I think it's considered a great place to
Good
raise
place
kids.
to raise a family? Okay.
I concur. That's why I moved to Kyle. So we were living in San Marcos, and we liked it, but we were having kids, and it was time to leave San Marcos, and we wanted to stay in their area. So found a good place to live, and it's worked out so far. So we like it.
Good.
When I always ask my neighbors, like, when they tell me they've moved here from somewhere else, they usually tell me something along the lines of, like, it's not too small either. Like, it's not too rural. It's still, you know, connected to Austin, but also, like, it's just as easy to go to Austin as it is to San Antonio for a lot of people.
That's a good point.
And that asset of being in between two cities is something that comes up a lot.
Okay. That's a good one.
In terms of family orientation is, and I'm not speaking for anyone, but actually more retirees are moving here. And actually moving out of, yes, moving out of even different parts of Hayes County moving here.
Okay.
As well as from out of state. I found that true in my neighborhood just by walking around. Not uncommon.
Okay. Excellent. Any other thoughts about values and identity? Okay. Any thoughts in general that came up that we forgot to put on a board that you'd like us to add? We'll kind of shift gears a little bit. Okay.
Can I add one to the
Yeah.
economic
Economic? Okay.
assets?
You bet.
Yes. The fact that we are a film-friendly community is
Okay.
a huge asset to us. We have a film company and production in Kyle right now that will be filming over the next 3 days, starting on Monday. And it's a huge economic benefit to
That's
our community.
great. Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit. There are some other things I think that you can probably help us with as we embark on this journey together. And so one of those is the comprehensive plan that you have that you're working with today. So as you all are doing your job as commissioners, and you're applying and using and interpreting and reviewing that plan in the context of the things that are brought before you for consideration, are there any things that you think would be important for us to know from a commissioner standpoint that work really well with the plan that you have now, or maybe that you wish had more clarity, more definition? You know, what cues can you give us about that so that we can make sure that when we're producing this document for you that we try to address some of those things that make your lives a little easier in your jobs? No, I was just going to give them a break for a moment. No, you're fine. Any thoughts about that?
I think for me, I would say, you know, I wish our districts, when we talked about like, you know, where things are located and why uses are the way they are, I wish they were more rooted in what those areas are for the people that are. Because like
Okay.
in the end, the city that we were planning for is about how people move in and out of those spaces.
Mhm.
Like as much as it is the built environment, it's also how we use the built environment. And I think oftentimes we focus so much on what we want that built environment to be that we lose what is the experience of that environment. And like I said, to do better at that.
That's a great comment. Okay, thank you. That's very valuable. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. So let's go to the last board here. I wanted to give you a break for a minute because listing things can get exhausting. So the last category that we're going to talk about is public assets. So when you're thinking about public assets, think about this in the context of things like education, healthcare, government. So some of these things we've touched on already, but there may be additional ones that we haven't thought of. You've mentioned things like the county, you've mentioned the hospital, any others that fall into that, education, healthcare, government kind of triangle of public assets?
Would this include police and fire?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So public safety,
Public Safety Center.
okay. The Public Safety Center. Schools. So talk about school district for a minute here. What are some of the impressions of the school district? What are things that you hear people say about the school district? Does that influence their decisions in moving here? What would you tell us to characterize that?
I have a comment.
Sure.
I appreciate how proactive our school district is whenever, I mean, they can't catch every single thing that happens and everything, but whenever there's a big issue, they do try to resolve stuff very quickly, and they do try to be proactive about resolving items. And
That's good.
so,
And how interactive is the school district with the city, the county? Any thoughts? We usually hear loud opinions about this in a community, so.
So internally,
Mm-hmm.
so our superintendent is on the Economic Development Tourism Board. The planning department works with their facilities head over there to make sure that they understand when there's projects from a residential perspective of a certain size or larger, they want to know so they can plan accordingly. And we've even sat down and they're updating their facilities plan for growth. And so we've sat down with them to make sure that they've properly identified areas that they think that are there or areas that they don't know about that are growing. And so
Okay.
we coordinate with them as well.
Sounds like a good partnership. Are there any other school districts that have facilities in
Yeah.
Kyle?
IDEA is a charter school. that is-
Okay.
and- Oh, and there's another one.
Too, right?
Valor, I think, yes. Just opened.
Valor, okay.
Yes.
VALOR. And you've got Austin Community College, any other community college, junior college, university presences of any kind?
We do have a surprising amount of Texas State students that actually live in Kyle.
Okay.
To meet.
Okay, that's good to know. What about trades, in any tech, any sort of educational facilities in those regards? No?
Well, the school district has a very, I guess, robust, to use Will's word, CTE program, Career and Technical Education
Okay.
program, in all three of their high schools.
Oh, wonderful.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can give you some data later about all the different degree programs that they have and certifications and the number of students that are enrolled.
Excellent.
And they do a lot of career, also like Career on Wheels and hiring days for seniors with
Okay.
our local employers. So there's a lot of workforce collaboration
That's
from our
wonderful.
school district.
Okay, awesome.
With
I love
healthcare,
hearing
we've
that.
got that hospital as a hub, but what you typically see is that associated practices, medical practices develop
Okay.
along with the hospital, which has happened. And there's been an Austin Regional Clinic open recently here in town. The second one, I think, actually, there's a PD clinic and a general medicine clinic. So I would anticipate that will continue, especially with more children in the community and more
Mhm.
retirees in the community. People
Sure.
need those.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for God's sakes, that Plum Creek thing has every sort of medicine-like specialty you want.
Mhm.
Are there any particular specialties that Kyle's particularly known for?
We have a lot of dentists and
Okay.
eye care.
Okay.
There's a lot of them.
Okay. Dental and eye care.
Our hospital is a level 2 trauma.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
good to know as
so
well.
that's also
Level
good.
2 trauma. Any privatized clinics, ERs, things of that nature?
There's at least one,
Okay.
Kyle ER, which
Okay.
it's just south of Target on the frontage road.
Okay.
I was going to say the spin-off economic effect of the hospital generated a massive amount of just private clinics, just generally like private offices for medical. So
Yeah.
it's a lot.
Okay. Any other public assets you can think of? Anything that we neglected to talk about outside of healthcare, government, medical, education?
We talked about the commissioners and your rooms. Consider that an asset to the public, as a public asset? The county?
Yeah, county.
Oh.
So you got county, and then you mentioned the conservation districts as well. So that's another board that would fall within this umbrella.
I mean, how many places can you mention parks?
Right, right.
Because like that is a.
That's
a
the
strong
definition of a
asset.
public asset.
would also say our library is fairly modern and like it's
Okay.
got a couple of programming spaces and things, and that's pretty good for
Library,
business.
that's a good one. Any community centers? You mentioned the pool already.
The wastewater treatment plant.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's an important one.
We just, we're essentially finished upgrading it. We've already applied for the next round of expansion.
Okay,
2 or 3 months ago. So
excellent.
we're constantly having to keep up on that.
And while that's important for obvious reasons with the growth, we're also expanding our water supply, which is really important in Texas. So we're bringing in water from northeast of the city in a pipeline.
Yeah,
So
water
that will
supply
give us,
is
I think, once more, maybe 4 sources of water for the city. So that's really important for the future of Kyle.
Excellent. Okay.
Sometimes an asset, sometimes a detriment. I-35.
Well stated.
Did I set you on the hate?
What's up?
Did I set you on the hate?
Okay.
So we have a
Thank you. Okay.
We have a pretty good working relationship with Pedernales Electric Cooperative, who's our
Okay.
power provider. And so we have contacts there, and so we try to make sure that we're, and even more so these days than we have in the past, trying to make sure we're keeping that relationship in good standing and making sure that we have infrastructure from them to be able to
Yeah.
support our growth.
Okay.
The city of Kyle has set up and established a really good web presence. It's very comprehensive, lots of information.
Great.
The best we've seen for a municipality.
That's great.
Would we say, the surrounding cities, do we have good relationships with them?
That's a good question.
Does anyone know what first year on us is?
Yes. Who asked that? Oh, there you are. It's an economic development incentive for any business that wants to move into Kyle or renovate, upgrade their building. And this, if city council awards it, they are rebated their first year's taxes. And if they're a tenant, it could be up to $5,000. If they're a landlord, they can apply also for $5,000 maximum. And if you're a landlord owner, it's up to $10,000. So that's why it's called a first year on us.
Okay.
Anything that adds value to your property, permanent improvements.
Got it. Okay, any final thoughts related to public assets?
Do we have the Uber 3.14 on this page?
We put it on one of these boards, but yeah, we should add it on this one as well.
The park system as well.
I think, yeah,
We
we
have
do
that on
have
there?
that one.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
Okay. All right, well, you all have been troopers. Any last minute things about any of the other boards that we need to add?
Can I add something to public assets?
Of course you can.
I would say like the fact that our growth means that we are continuing to be able to tackle all of our challenges within the budget, not having to have sales tax elections. Like I guess fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, that's great.
Like it's a big deal.
Do you think that's maybe also an identity asset? Is that something that's important to Kyle as a whole?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's something to think about. Okay, so to kind of get us towards the tail end here, because you all have hung in there really well, just imagine, we do these sometimes for 6 or 7 hours at a time. You guys are getting off easy. So one of the things that we mentioned is that there will be an engagement process throughout the entire planning horizon. And so it's important for us to make sure with each group of locals that we talk to, one of the things that we end our conversation with is asking them about ideas about how to reach people in Kyle. And, you know, just give us a general sense of where you think engagement can improve, and that would help us greatly as we start to work with the city to coordinate and plan for engagement moving forward. So what thoughts do you have, first of all, about reaching people in Kyle. Any particularly good ways to do that? Any particularly good places to disseminate information? This is something that we've gotten some great insights on, but we'd like to hear from all of you as well.
I think there's a lot of people engaged with the HOAs, and so communication with
HOAs.
HOAs is a good way
Okay.
to disseminate and also pull in ideas from people.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. People are engaged where they live, of
So-
course.
Maybe just a few miles on that effort. Some of the developments are so new, the way things are structured. The HOAs, though created, are entities that exist, they're in the hands of the developer, exclusive control. So communicating to the residents through the HOA structure can be a real problem. So finding, however you do this, communications, really how to do pushes through the feedback, the Facebook pages that are created, nevertheless. They're not corporate, they're local
Sure. Okay.
for each subdivision.
Okay. HOA subdivision pages.
Community impact, the,
Yeah.
yeah, is a good resource.
That's a good
That's a
one.
very good one.
Yeah.
Do we still do the Kyle 10 and Channel 10? Do we still have that?
Yeah, we have the public.
We're on it right now, I think.
television.
We're on Kyle 10 right now.
Okay, then.
Yes.
I can't stress enough, and I know people have heard this before, so you're gonna go, oh, I roll my eyes. Well, that is when I say this, but like, I can't stress enough talking directly to the apartment communities. If you look at the surveys for the city of Kyle, apartment communities respond super low. Apartment management doesn't always engage, doesn't always, make the effort to allow you to engage in a lot of these city-specific things. Like, they want to hear about how they're doing, not necessarily how the city is doing. So I can't stress enough talking to those communities, because those people could be future taxpayers in our city
Absolutely.
and not leave other places.
Yeah, I thought that was a great idea. Great pipeline of information.
As a resident here for over 3.5 years, and somebody who likes information about the world around him, I find it very difficult, by and large, to get good information about what is going on in the city. And I pay attention to these channels we're talking about, but it is very difficult in this modern period to do that. And I think that's figuring out any piece of that, apartments or otherwise, is going to be very important here, because there's so many new people here, and people feeling they're very isolated. They're just
Sure.
moving here, so we've got to get through that somehow.
Great
It's
point.
not going to be easy.
Great point.
I mean, social media, we were talking earlier about how many young adults are here and young families, and everyone uses social media. So putting things on there that are shareable, where people can spread it around, would be good.
Excellent. Any other thoughts? What sort of frustrations or comments have you heard from the public that you think would be helpful for us to keep in mind? We've heard some of them already, but you probably hear different things than we did last night.
I'll bite. A lot of people in my neighborhood do not want to have to drive outside of Kyle for things like a date night or grown-up things, like not kid-centric stuff, like a nice place to have dinner or go see live music and places like that. So
Okay.
they'd like to see more of that.
Okay, that's good
I'd
feedback.
like to say ditto. I was gonna say the same thing. It's a very common complaint, not enough social places, not enough restaurants,
Sure.
and not a central walkable place with multiple restaurants.
More grocery stores.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very common.
I would say every time I tell somebody I'm on planning and zoning, they say, I wish there were more spaces for me to go do things in Kyle. They say it's the 9 to 5, they may not necessarily always spend here. I mean, obviously we'd love to have as many businesses as possible, we'd love to do all that, to have the office space, all of the 9 to 5 aspect, but it's the other part of that, the 5 to 5 essentially, that they're airing their frustrations about. Like, they want things to do when they come home. They want things to do when they're, they don't want to feel isolated and feel lonely. I think that's a lot of what I hear when I talk to folks is like, they want more spaces to connect with others and for it to feel natural a little more than it does now.
That's good
To,
feedback.
to add on to that, is that the 18-hour day? The 18-hour city?
I mean, you
Yes.
can take
Or
it that way.
24
24
hours.
hours.
Yeah, something to do in the evening.
Yeah, you
And
can
it
take it
doesn't
that
have
way.
to be anything crazy, but something that's just, it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, listen, we're on your time, so we want to make sure that we address everything. So before we wrap tonight, just know that we'll, of course, be seeing you again. I think we have 1 or 2 meetings that we'll be doing with you virtually, and we'll, of course, be meeting with you every time that we're in town. And so we'll continue. This is just an ongoing conversation that will continue throughout the process. So I can't emphasize enough what we really seek from you during this time. First and foremost is just helping us get the word out. We can do some of that, but we're not locals. We don't have the same reach that you have, and people often really relate to hearing things from people they consider friends and neighbors, family members, coworkers, and so the more that you can help us spread the word, that will be really crucial. The website, again, I'll plug quickly that we mentioned for the project is going to be key to helping people plug in. We want people to not feel that they have to search for, to your point, they don't have to search necessarily for information to know what's going on with the project. That's one reason why we've been working with the city to create that as a standalone site. So it's one stop, one location to find that information. The city, of course, will also be working to push out information throughout the entire project. So that's one thing we ask for your help with. Secondly, again, when we are preparing for trips, we'll have a pretty robust schedule. You guys are paying us for our time, and so we want to cram in as much as we can when we come visit. And so we'll coordinate with Will to make sure that that information gets out to you all, and you can keep people kind of up to date on what to expect with each of those trips. Last thing I want to do is just make sure that we offer to answer any questions that you might have about what's to come, the process, the timeline, or anything else. I know we've covered a lot of ground, but if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to visit and address as many of those as we can.
Is the outreach going to be in Spanish, or, when it goes out to the public? I mean, is that going to be...
That's one suggestion that we've made. We recently put together a list of suggested engagement practices for the city so that they can continue this even when we're not here. And so that's one of the things that was contained in that, is making sure that people can be reached in different ways, both in terms of language and just in terms of comfort level. Some people work great in a crowd. Some people would rather give one-on-one advice. Some people would rather fill out a survey by hand. Others might want to do it online. And so the goal is to try to offer something for everyone in that regard. So if you think of ideas along those lines, please let Will know or let us know, and that'll be helpful. Good question. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
You bet.
You've asked us a lot of questions about our city, so I'm going to ask y'all one, which
Please.
is, after this is your first visit out of like 5,
Mm-hmm.
what is the one thing you're taking away from this experience coming here that you think is important to the things that we're talking about?
We probably all would have different answers to that,
Yeah,
so I want to
absolutely.
invite you guys to have something you want to share. Marshall hasn't gotten to talk yet. Let's let Marshall talk.
Thank you very much. Marshall Hines. When we took our tour, we traveled, sort of started in the north side of town, worked our way down. We did a lot of the engagement. We had one event sort of on the north side of town today, but a lot of the engagement that we found was more centrally located, closer into downtown. And that, in addition to what we saw when we went over to the other side of 35, gave me the impression that there are very sort of distinct character areas of the community. And so I'm going to be interested to hear more from the citizens about how to better perhaps connect those spaces, and how they see the uniqueness of these places and how that can be highlighted. So it's a very interesting city, both geographically and the way it's developing. So I'm going to be interested to see what the community feels about that as well.
Right, yeah. That's a good point. I mean, on the east side of Kyle, it's just really, you have the hospital and the Walmart, stuff that's right off the interstate. Other than that, it's just neighborhoods. I mean, you don't have anything that's, kind of what to do. So there are things to do. There's definitely, I can see that there's like, are part of the city too, you gotta include everybody's.
That's right. I mean, a comprehensive plan, that title's, it's doing a lot of lifting, right? It's comprehensive because it incorporates many different facets of the way that your local government works, but it fails if it isn't comprehensive in the people and places that it connects to throughout the community. So that's part of what we're doing, is trying to make sure that, you know, if there are areas of town that in the past have not felt like they have gotten their chance to be involved, we want to try and include that here. And if they're missing something specifically, we want to identify those things so that it can be included in the plan to be something that you're working toward, right? That's identifying the problem is the first step. So we're very excited about it. So thank you guys very much.
I love Marshall's answer. I think we forget about the little people that don't think they have a voice. So I think that's a really good point. Also, we heard a lot of people who just moved here. So it's always interesting to incorporate the new people. They don't really know much, and making sure that they have a say because they just got here and they're probably going to be here for a while. So just incorporating not just the old mentality of everybody who's been here forever, but also the new ones, and making sure there's a balance of who's already here and who's coming tomorrow. So that's a tough one to do.
Good answers. Yeah, I think both of those are very accurate. I think for me, having had a prior life as a planning director for different cities, and being continually frustrated with some of the comprehensive plan products that I received and had to try to implement, I think we're going to be very hyper aware of how to try to make this document work for the community so that all of you that have a role to play in the application of it, it's very clear and very concise and helps you to do your jobs as effectively as possible. Some of the conversations that we've had so far have been really interesting because some of the initial things that we go into communities and see that they're lacking are things that you already have that are very strong. So that's been a very interesting observation to see where you have some different assets that are things that we often find in these efforts we're trying to help cities develop. But I think in this effort will be more of helping you leverage. So you're a little further along in some of those things. I think too, in discussions with the staff, trying to balance the desires that the public has and how to get there in a way that you, with your resource constraints and the time that you have available to put towards that, can be best spent. You know, earlier someone said something about just kind of this fiscal awareness. And how to maybe maintain that into the future is a big part of our approach to planning. So, we're looking at not just doing the right things because they're the right things, but also helping you make the kind of fiscal bottom line arguments for those things that tend to resonate with your residents. So if we do this well, I think we feel that when we leave here, you'll be able to communicate directly and more effectively with the public, and the public will feel like they have a vested interest in this plan and that they have, again, a clear path as to how they can plug in so that this is a document that you can use effectively and isn't a document that sits until you get ready to revise it again, I think is something that's important to us. So long-winded answers, but hopefully we gave you a little bit of insights into what we're seeing. The public that we've spoken with so far seems very excited about the opportunity, curiously optimistic about the opportunity, not entirely sure where this is going to go, but very open to those conversations, which is what we want and what you need. And so we're excited to continue those conversations moving forward with the help of all of you.
I wonder if part of your work will be looking at our old comprehensive plan
Yes,
and seeing
it will.
how well it worked and what didn't, what things couldn't be implemented and what things were implemented well.
I'm
It's
glad you
something
brought
I'm
that
going
up.
through now because
Yeah.
just want to be helpful in that way, but I just wonder if that was part of y'all's.
It definitely
work,
is.
too.
Part of this first phase when we're doing assessment is really looking at what you have. And so that's why we asked some of the questions about what do you think is working well with it? Are there things that you wish maybe could be more concise or more better defined, given more guidance, things of that. So be thinking about that as you're going about your work in the next few weeks. And we like to hear that because we certainly have a definitive idea and opinion about how we would put it together based on our experience, but it's ultimately your document and your product, so it needs to speak to what it is that you need. So that will be a big part of it. We'll be looking at the implementation of that plan. We'll be working with staff to understand elements of it that work well. Our update to your plan, there are elements that will be updated heavily using what you already have because you have some strong tools in place, and then there will be some other elements of the plan that will be brand new to you. So our goal is kind of a seamless transition and accounting of the work that you've done before, because there is a lot of value to that, and then just bringing that forward where it's germane to the time you're in now and in the years to come.
So last week, I got to hear from y'all in El Paso a little bit, and I was hoping you could maybe share briefly with everyone else here and anyone watching more about your fiscal analysis process and what that means and that kind of thing.
Sure, we're happy to do that, and thank you for attending our session. We're glad to hear that. So a lot of our work comes from understanding that the decisions that you make from a land development perspective, they have really far-reaching impacts. So, you know, the transition, kind of the formula that we encourage people to understand in cities that often isn't understood fully, except for people like yourselves, council members that are dealing with it daily, is understanding that, you know, first and foremost, you have this idea of what your city is going to become, the vision, the comprehensive plan, which is what we're talking about here today, that adopted vision and the goals and objectives that you hope to achieve in pursuit of that vision. But that flows and should flow into kind of the next piece, which is the template that you set for your community for land development through the codes that you've adopted. And those codes then guide, shape, and direct the physical land development pattern that you have, and that ties directly to your fiscal bottom line. So a heart of all of ours, that's kind of the central piece of these plans, is really understanding in Kyle, what does that mean for you all specifically? So the first part of this plan will be taking a look at your tax appraisal information on a lot-by-lot basis citywide, and mapping that to understand exactly what parts of your city are being more fiscally productive than others, what that reveals about land development patterns that do well in this environment, and then recommendations within the plan that help you put yourself in a position to create more of those good things. And so that's essentially a very high-level overview of that process. This means different things in different communities, but there's a lot of common themes that we see amongst communities as well, and we talked about some of those in this session. They're not hard and fast rules, but they're things over our body of work that we found come up time and time again. Things like, for example, the grid that you mentioned earlier, and some of the different levels of density and the things that those produce for a city. We also try to make sure that in the work that we do, we're giving the most accurate view of that fiscal bottom line. So we're not just talking about property values, which is where cities tend to often look, and that is an important element to understand, but it's only one piece of the true picture. And to dig deeper, just as with a business, you can't really rest on your laurels as to what your revenue is you generate each year. You also have to factor in your own operating costs, your people costs, and that really gives you that accurate picture. We likewise work with cities to get an accurate picture by incorporating things like maintenance of infrastructure, which is something we tend to forget about periodically from a fiscal perspective, but it's something we're paying for all the time. And the amount that we pay towards that and the rate at which we can keep up or fall behind with that maintenance is directly tied to the land development patterns that you have. So in short, we're here to help you identify what your vision is for this community, the different land development types and patterns that can help you get there, and to help put together kind of a plan of execution for you so that those results are something that you're able to execute and produce for your community. I hope that got what you were looking for. You're welcome. Any other questions? We've probably worn you all out by this point, so we want to keep you fresh for the next meeting. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate the thoughts that you've given us. We may follow up with some questions as we start to kind of download and disseminate the information. We might have some different clarifications that we need, and we'll work through Will to get that from you all. Thank you for your generosity with your time tonight, and we look forward to being back in Kyle soon. And I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on. Item number 5B. 5B, discussion only regarding Planning and Zoning Commission requests for future agenda items. Are there any items any commissioners would like to see on a future agenda? Okay, we'll move on to number 6. 6, staff report. 6A, staff report by William Atkinson, Director of Planning.
To add on to the to what AJ said for doing your group, we had a pretty successful last couple of days. We had a lot of fun talking to people out in the community and what have you. They were mostly focused here on the square, but it was actually a really good place to do it. With the new Mary Kyle House and Park renovations and everything, it worked out pretty well. So we're, of course, over the next 12 months or so, we're going to be continually working on the comp plan and making sure it's something that we make it the best that it possibly can be. So expect more meetings than usual. They will be scheduled, and we'll make sure we're coordinating with you on that. Additionally, and related to it on a smaller scale, as you all know, I sent out an email today relating to the next few meetings for the downtown master plan approval process. It is a couple extra meetings that you may not normally want to attend, perhaps, but it's very important that we're trying to get that one knocked out and get it approved. We try to take into account the holidays schedule as well for people likely to go on vacation or what have you, so I do appreciate all the responses we have from y'all. If you haven't responded yet, let us know if you can attend those meetings, because it's very important. So, council's next week on Tuesday. Standard. So, I don't have anything else. So, any questions for me on that?
Any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I think this is
Yeah.
kind of new. Do you know kind of a schedule of what are the things that we have done are going to council next week? Using expectation.
Say it again.
So I don't think we've ever asked this question before, but I'm super curious. Is there an expectation on kind of anything that we've been doing recently that's going to council next week already?
That we have done recently.
Yeah. The only reason I
Just
ask that is
generally?
because I want to make sure we're keeping track of like which items are coming from here to council.
Oh, just like
Like
public
zoning.
hearings and all,
Yeah.
okay, excuse me.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like P and Z directed stuff.
Oh,
and
God,
all that.
no.
Okay. So we have the Julia Parker zoning that's going for second read next week. There's a couple tweaks that they still need to make that we're getting to them, finalizing for the agenda tomorrow. The Joe Brooks zoning is delayed till the 15th to resolve some issues related to floodplain stuff. It's a PUD as well. And you know what? I have the agenda pulled up, I think. It's actually posted. I don't. That's the July. Let's see. We're going to be they postponed at the last meeting the consideration of the community commercial zoning. So we're that'll be back up for consideration. And let's see what's on consent. One of the plats that y'all approved tonight, that's for Plum Creek, so it has to go to city council. And then y'all didn't see this side of it, but we are accepting taking to council a 3.5 acre parkland dedication for the CSW group for their project behind Target there, and that's just part of their development agreement. And the second reading of the Paramount subdivision zoning that we were trying to just dot the i's, cross the t's on, that y'all saw. So that's it that I'm seeing here. So yeah.
Item number 7, adjournment. I move that we adjourn.
Second?
That's been moved by myself, seconded by Commissioner James. Is any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes.
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you all very much.